I think it's about time we all had that chat. Awkward. No, it won't be. It'll be fine, I promise. I should start by saying that professionally, I've got no training whatsoever in sex relationship education. I've got no hands-on teaching experience, and I have never done this before. Good, isn't it? What I have got is an awful lot of research, a fair amount of experience, and a passion for telling you exactly where we are with sex relationship education in schools, and why starting communication from home is so important. If I look back across my own sexual history, I can confidently say that largely it's been fairly good. All down to me. However, I can also pinpoint instances where I've definitely been a victim. I've felt the effects of sexual harassment, sexual assault. I've been manipulated by someone whose job it was to safeguard me. And I've definitely been involved in intercourse where I did not have the capacity to give consent. I've dealt with it. For me, it's not a daily trial anymore. For a lot of people, it still is. And they should not be the ones still dealing with this. Where was SRE when we were growing up? Why wasn't our own development supported with proper guidance? Why were we left to figure it out on our own? And where are we now? Well, here. The national curriculum states that sex and relationship education is the process of supporting young people from adolescence through to adulthood. The national curriculum for sex and relationship education hasn't been updated since the year 2000. To give you a broader context of when that was, I'm fairly sure we still had dial-up in my house back then. And this statement's incredibly misleading. The only aspect of sex and relationship education that is compulsory is the biological aspects, so bearing children and sexually transmitted diseases. In 2013, Ofsted produced a report called SRE Not Yet Good Enough. In it, they found that 40% of schools were below average in their teaching of SRE. The only immediate action from this report that I could find was a discussion in the House of Lords. And in it, they discussed things like mental health, pornography, sexual consent and respect. The only subject out of that elicited any kind of response was pornography. And of that, all they did was decide to commit to looking into filtering computers better, so explicit content is harder to find. I'm not going to argue that safeguarding isn't a good idea, because of course it is, it's fantastic. But we need more than that. This isn't all the reform we need. Nearly half of secondary-aged children have had no education about consent, respect, or when to know whether a relationship is safe. 43% have not learned what getting consent is, how they give consent, and whether they do not have the capacity to give consent. This really troubles me. Really troubles me. I can tell you that shutting your eyes and willing for something to be over is not fun. Consent is everything. And thankfully, it's a value respected by the Thames Valley Police. They started a campaign which is called Consent is Everything. And it's a really user-friendly website filled with information about consent, where to look for if you're worried about your relationship, charity partners, anyone that you need to talk to, they're there. They're also the brains behind a really good video called It's as Simple as a Cup of Tea. I think a lot of you might have already seen it. It's basically a video where consent is described as offering someone a cup of tea. And it's a really good resource for learning about face-to-face consent. But we know that face-to-face consent isn't the only issue. Unfortunately, technology has leaped across quite considerably. I think arguably this is probably the hardest time so far to have been a teenager. The ability to arbitrarily share content, the media messages spilling out of every device, and the access to personal information that can be used to attack are all new battles we now have to face. When I was 17, almost 18 years old, a boy I knew hacked my computer and he stole personal images of me. He set those images as my profile picture on all my social networks. He sent them to everyone in my Hotmail contact list, and he sent them to everyone in my MSN, which was WhatsApp for the millennials. He did that twice in 3 months. The second time he did it to my best friend as well. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't know who to tell. The first few questions I thought of were, do I tell my school? Is this a criminal case? I didn't tell my school because generally the impression I got from my school was like this. My school taught and treated harassment like it was banter or lad culture. My own personal experience taught me that I didn't have a lot of support there. 60% of 13 to 20-year-old girls have experienced sexual harassment at school. Sexual harassment and assault at school and college is happening. Victim blaming is happening. And earlier this year, there was a case that got a lot of publicity that really resonated with me, and I'd like to share it with you now. These are some of the questions the victim of the Stanford rape case was asked. On the night of January 17, 2015, a college student was found outside of a college party with pine needles in her hair. She didn't wake up until the next day. She was unconscious. She had been raped. She made one mistake that night, which was overestimating her tolerance for alcohol, which I think every single one of us has done. She didn't deserve to be raped. She wasn't asking for it. She didn't do herself a disservice. She did not invite an invasion of her most personal self. She wrote a letter to her rapist, Brock Turner. It was an open letter, and it went viral. In it, she took her power back. She was going to be a victim of his crime, but she was not going to be his victim. Brock Turner was sentenced to 6 months. He served just 3 of those things. Sentence. After that, this hashtag went viral. His dad wrote a letter to the judge asking for a lenient sentence, and in it he said that Brock had never been violent in his life. He had no prior criminal convictions, and including the night that the rape took place, he still wasn't violent. His dad thought rape wasn't violent. This is an extreme case, but I think in terms of learning, it's a really good case study to learn. Maybe if Brock had a better all-round education, he would have thought twice before sexually assaulting someone. Maybe he'd even be able to educate his dad too. Maybe if the people in my life knew how their actions would affect me, they would have thought twice. Don't get me wrong, I am a fantastically happy person now. Brilliant. I have a great family, but brilliant friends, and I've got a very supportive partner. The assaults are a part of my history. They've moulded me. But I needed my school to reflect the narrative that I learned at home, reflect the things my mum taught me. It's okay. It's your right to say no. Parents, guardians, teachers all have the power to effect positive change. The PHSE Association produced this document to support the woefully outdated National Curriculum Guidelines. In it is support for both parents and teachers in telling you how to go about teaching this really sensitive topic. The best way to affect positive SRE is to have communication both at home and at school. If you're worried about what the SRE at your child's school is, it is your legal right to request it, and they have to provide it to you. I'm doing this talk because I feel like it's important to note when I realised this was an issue. When I was 18, I sat my mum and dad down and I told them everything that was going on at school and in my personal life. My parents are, without a doubt, the most forgiving, kind and patient people I have ever known. When I told them, my first reaction wasn't relief, it was guilt. I felt guilty that I'd restricted them. I'd taken away their ability to be my mum and dad. My experiences have moulded me to believe there's value in secrecy, and there's not, and that's a dangerous thing to believe. I remember I told my mum in one instance where I'd walked out of the house in the rain to see a friend of mine, and I did it to talk to her and tell her that I wasn't sure if I was feeling safe in my relationship. I was outside in the rain crying for about an hour, and I'd walked past my mum in the hallway to do that. I should have just told my mum. Since that day, I have kept nothing from her, arguably being too graphic at times. But it's probably why I'm so happy now. I think finding the line between giving children the chance to become well-positioned adults and not being too consumed in their lives is difficult. And I have no doubts that it's going to be something I find troubling when I become a parent. But don't you think it would be so much better if the narrative we taught our children about morals, value, respect, and consent were reflected in their secondary schools? I do. Thank you.